Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with John Layfield. John, what's going on, man? How
Not
are
too
you?
much. I understand I got a summer shirt on. Dave Silva, who's apparently a fashionista, told me that. I have no idea what he's talking about.
Well, we know that you know a thing or two about wrestling. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Booker T is our topic. But before we talk about the five-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion, we got to talk about Ron Killings. He's the talk of the internet. It's perhaps the most notable release in recent WWE memory. Seemingly everyone caught by surprise. What did you think when you heard the news, John?
I was starting at San Antonio when I got released in the World Football League, and I never wasn't even worried about getting cut. I guess the NFL brought a guy in or something and wanted him to play in the World League, and they cut me. I'd started every game the year before, and I'm starting. I'm number one on the depth chart. I'd never not been number one once I got to be number one. And all of a sudden, they just cut me, and it's the best thing ever happened to me. I go into wrestling, but I didn't understand it at all. And, kind of in hindsight, I realized maybe, NFL had sent a guy down. I don't understand this with Ron Killings either. I mean, it's the same perplexing thing to me. I thought it was a joke. I looked at Brian Armstrong had something on his Twitter because I was down in Mexico City and I'm flying back and I see it and he goes, I'm really bummed or something. And he goes, I can't believe they released our Killings or something like that. And I looked it up and I thought it's got to be a storyline. I mean, the guy just main evented Saturday Night Main Event. He's selling a ton of merch, and it absolutely perplexing to me. One of the most bizarre releases that I've seen.
Yeah, and listen, I think a lot of people are sort of scratching their heads about what does this mean? Does this mean that, it truly is TKO? It's no longer the old guard, because a lot of people associate Killings with Vince. Whether that's right or wrong, but it is interesting because that shirt, the Ron Cena shirt, was seemingly doing well merch wise, but as of us speaking right now, I don't even think it's for sale any longer. So it's been pulled down. It's a real head scratcher. I mean, on the one hand, I want to think that maybe they knew this was coming to an end and his contract was coming due, and they all wanted to have the proper send off with Saturday night's Main Event and all that, but John, I felt like if they were going to do that, maybe they would have said title versus career or something like that. But because they didn't, it just feels out of left field, right?
Yeah, I can see the title versus career. Ron Truth has had a great career. And of course, he's still got years left. I know he's 53 years old, I think is what I read on the internet, but he's in tremendous shape. He's a great athlete. He's still just as athletic, at least he looks like he is. I'm sure he doesn't feel like he's 28 years old, but he looks like he's 28. He moves like he's 28 again. He's got years left because he hasn't aged. He doesn't look like an older guy. And so I guess I would have assumed that this was known beforehand. I mean, I'd love to get some back info on this. I just got back in the country, but I can't wait to try to find out what happened because I just assumed that somebody had to know about this beforehand. It just doesn't seem like it would come out of left field after what Ron has done recently. And it's, I get all the career stuff. Everything comes to an end, and I understand that. Everybody gets let go at some point in their life. You're not adopted, you're hired. And, he's had a great run and he's not near done yet. He's going to make a ton of money somewhere. I don't know where he goes, but Ron's as entertaining a guy as there is. He's going to do fine, but no run goes in perpetuity. I'm just surprised it ends so suddenly. And then when it did.
I bet this time next year, Ron Killings is an even bigger star, making more money, courting more attention than he is even right now.
He is unbelievably talented.
Yes.
There's nothing he can't do. When he does that, it takes a smart guy to play a dumb guy. That's what they always say. Wrestling the guys who play the dumb guys are usually very smart because they have to be smart to be able to play the dumb guy. You look at Santino Morelli, very, very smart guy to use the broken English and be able to put words together and make things happen. Killings is a very smart guy. He can get anything over. I would imagine he's going to be a massive star. A bigger star, you're right, a year from now. I'll take that bet with anybody. Bigger star a year from now than he is right now.
And just to tell you how long he's been a big deal with WWE and just exactly how long that is, I know he had a cup of coffee before, but this run for R-Truth started January 29th, 2008, That's the same week, John, that WWE went to HD TV. So R-Truth has been working for WWE since they had HD, John.
What a legacy. That is tremendous. Have you heard anything? Do you have any idea why he got released?
You know, the only thing that Dave Meltzer and others are reporting is they think it's just a TKO decision to keep budgets in line. And obviously, you know, Triple H is the guy who makes those decisions, because I think there are some fans who want to know, hey, who's to blame for this? A lot of people felt like Mr. Killings was going to be a lifer for WWE, much like maybe we all think The Miz is as well. But to be honest with you, John, I remember when something like this happened when Endeavor first bought the UFC. They had these elder statesmen who had basically ambassador roles, pulling down about $250,000 a year. Guys like Chuck Liddell, guys like Matt Hughes, guys like Forrest Griffin, guys who really paved the way for the UFC to become a multi-billion-dollar property. And when Endeavor bought UFC, in short order, all of those guys were fired. Those contracts were canceled. It was a cost-cutting measure, and I get that. But I think this Ron Killings release is yet another sign that, man, corporate wrestling isn't quite the same as the way it's been ran before, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. But also, I want to, I don't work for WB. So, people have made all kinds of assumptions about what I do. I want to stick up for them a little bit, though, because you look at what their Legends contracts are. I mean, they're paying guys basically a pension through these Legends. Now, I understand they get something out of it. They get name and likeness out of it. But then when they get name and likeness, they have to pay when they use your name and likeness. Now, if it goes over your Legends contract, you get a bonus at the end. But there are a lot of guys out there that are right now under Legends contract. That's essentially a pension. And so there are a lot of guys that are being taken care of. So it's not just, totally cutthroat and cold-blooded and all that. There is a lot out there. Now, they get something out of it. But it's a business too. It's not an adoption service. And Ron has had an unbelievable. I love Truth. Me and Ron Simmons have had so much fun with Truth. He's just one of those guys everybody loves, and he's going to be fine. But it's not. I get the cold-blooded aspect of it, but with what they do with a lot of these legend contracts, a lot of guys are taken care of that otherwise, would have got a pension or something else if you were in the NFL or something. So there is some things there.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not dunking on WWE. I think it's silly we have to have the discussion of who's to blame. It's a business. Right. People make business decisions. It's a mathematical equation. I'm sorry. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, and if you're R-Truth, you're saying, hey, can I have this run when HDTV starts? And then all of a sudden when TKO buys it, which TKO wasn't even invented then, in a $30 billion market cap company in about a couple decades, and then I get released after being Saturday Night's Main Event with a top-selling shirt, and then I'm going to realize I'm going to go off at age 53 to go to the independents and probably make more money and become a bigger name. Would I take that? I guarantee you that R-Truth would have took that in a heartbeat. Anybody would have.
That's the right perspective to have, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for him. And Carlito. I don't know if you saw, but I guess it's out that Carlito is going to be finishing up with WWE. That's a guy that you've shared a locker room with throughout the years. What do you make of this Carlito news, and what do you hope is next for Carlito outside of WWE?
I read this tweet or X, whatever. I don't know what you call them now. They're not tweets. They're X's or what do you call them now? They post, I guess.
I guess a post on X, yeah.
Yeah, so I read this post. It's typical Carlito. He's hilarious. He is so funny. The fact that he's got to give money back because he's been stealing money. It was awesome. Carlito looks fantastic. The guy put a lot of effort and work into his body. He's taking care of himself. Same thing. He's a very marketable guy. He's got the Cologne name, which helps you as much as anything. But that ovation he got in Puerto Rico, you can't replicate that. I mean, people live their lives and don't ever get that. Carlito's going to be fine. And again, a talented guy like Carlito. I would think they could find something for Carlito and Truth, but not my company, and I have no idea what's going on.
Hey, I do want to ask you if you had a chance to see the comments from Rikishi that went kind of viral this weekend. Did you see that?
I saw part of them. Again, I was down in Mexico, and I didn't have much data, so I was supposed to have data on my phone, and I didn't, so I wasn't able to get any social media or anything.
Well, let me keep you up to speed here. Here's what Rikishi had to say. Something like, Why? He's questioning the tag match. I mean, Jay is a world heavyweight champion by himself. Okay. Oh, they really need to fire creative services over there now. Just book me so I can book my son's matches out there. Like, I mean, okay, you had me. They brought in Paul to face him, but damn, I wouldn't have beat him the first time they locked up together. Could have waited till a cage match or a gimmick match. Paul's got heat, and this will probably be his biggest spotlight in WWE, and they're both young. Shit, come on now. So now you beat Paul, and now where you go? Into a tag team bout? I guess Rikishi is not pleased that his son, the world champion, is in a tag match with the hottest star in the business the last 2 years, Cody Rhodes, John Cena on one of his last PLEs in his last year in WWE, and Logan Paul, who has almost as much social influence as WWE as a company. This feels like a massive main event to me. I mean, listen, to each his own. I get he's trying to cheer for his son, but man, I think I'd be thrilled with that main event for my kid.
I'll take it right now.
Right?
Absolutely. I'll take it right now. Look, I love Rikishi, and that's his son, and that's a father speaking out on behalf of his son. And I'm not going to pick anything apart. I love Rikishi, and I love the whole family. And I love Jay, and I love the fact that Jay is the world champion. And you know, dads are very protective of their sons. I think that's perfectly understandable.
There's no doubt about it. Logan Paul has certainly had his critics lately, and I know that this statement had to be something that catch your attention. Last week, he basically addressed his peers who weren't happy with his position in WWE, saying, "It's my understanding that some of my peers are not happy that I get these shots so quickly in my career. Let me break it down for you. In your simple brains, do you think I'm here because I go viral? You see the numbers and you think that's why I'm here. No, the reason I'm given these opportunities so early in my career is because A, I'm fantastic, and B, because I've been getting those impressions for a decade now. And with those impressions comes an audience, a fan base, eyeballs. People watch what I do. They care about what I do. Whether they're on my team, they want me to win. Whether they're wanting me to fail, doesn't matter. They're watching, and that's the currency, attention. So my question to the people who have a problem with my position in WWE, who's watching you?" What do you think of this, John?
What part of that's wrong?
Yeah, he nailed it, didn't he?
100%. He is 100% right. Everything that he said in there is 100% correct. Look, did I want to be Lex Luger and go right straight to the main event? Did I want to be Kurt Angle and go right straight to the main event? Damn right I did. I was working my ass off in all the territories around the world. It took me a long time to get there. Did I want to go straight to it like those guys did? Yeah. Would I like to do it like Logan Paul does it? Yeah. That doesn't happen sometimes in life. Sometimes guys get fast-tracked because of who they are. And he got fast-tracked because who he is. And if you don't like who he is, draw more impressions than him, draw more ratings than him, draw more eyeballs than him, and draw more social media than him. And the guys aren't doing it. You know, guys have always bitched about when Hogan came back, when Warrior came back, when Sid came back, when the Road Warriors would come back, when whoever was gone would come back. Now they bitch about The Rock. Now they're bitching about Logan Paul. Guys, if you're drawing the big enough ratings, you don't need these guys, and you won't use them. And if you do, they'll be below you, not above you. That's on you. That's not on them. The guys that are speaking out against Logan Paul, give me a freaking break.
Well, let me give you a freaking break from bad cereal. Can I recommend Magic Spoon? They got you covered with high protein, zero sugar cereal and treats. It's all reinvented from your childhood. That was kind of spooky breakfast right there, wasn't it? Magic Spoon also has a brand new high protein granola. You can be true to that Magic Spoon promise. It's packed with protein and oh so crunchy. You've heard me brag about the treats for a while. You've heard me say they're crispy, they're crunchy, they're airy, and an easy way to get 12 grams of protein on the go with a bunch of great flavors like marshmallow, chocolatey peanut butter, and dark chocolate. But the brand new granola packs have 13 grams of protein and zero added sugars with even great flavors like dark chocolate almond. What about honey almond, even peanut butter? Go right now and get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/wrestle or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/wrestle for $5 off. John, some sad news. We're hearing that Ricky Morton has decided to close down his training facility. He ran that for about 11 years there. And I guess in Newport, Tennessee, the School of Morton is no more. I know you've got a lot of respect for Ricky Morton, but with him stepping back from training, man, do you think he's got something up his sleeve? I mean, what a great trainer to have, right? Ricky Morton, my goodness.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, the guy was Ricky. I just wish Ricky had been. We've talked about this many, many times, but we wish Ricky had been in WWE. The merch he would have sold, those boys, man, they were on fire. I mean, you talk about one of the greatest tag teams of all time. I mean, those guys just unparalleled. Those in the Road Warriors in the '80s, there wasn't any better. And Ricky is, his boy Kerry is doing incredible work. Kerry, he's just a wonderful young man, good talent, very smart, does a lot of stuff with the social media, with a lot of different groups, does a lot of the office stuff, got a great future ahead of him. I don't know what Ricky has planned. I'd love to see him at NXT or somewhere with WWE. He has so much to offer. That guy's forgot more about wrestling than most guys will ever know.
I'm pumped to see what's next for Ricky, and I can't wait to see what's next for Kerry. I know that, man, he's got his whole future in front of him, just graduating college. It's going to be interesting to see what Kerry looks like in 10 years. Let's talk about Vince McMahon. He made some headlines this past weekend, John. It came out that Vince has a name for his new company, 14th and I Holdings, LLC, 14th and I Investments, LLC, 14th and I Management LLC. This was released, I guess, over the weekend. A big announcement that, Vince is in business. Brad Blum is going to be the CEO. We know his name from WWE. We've heard this, many months ago, John, that he had bought a studio in Santa Monica and that they had offices in Stamford, and some of the usual suspects were reporting to work. But now I guess the name is public. 14th and I, which I guess was the cross street from his dad's old office at Capitol back in the day. I mean, this is kind of neat to see what's next for Vince. I guess it said that it's an investment firm that's going to pursue opportunities in sports, media, and entertainment. What do you make of this announcement and the name?
The name, let me talk about first. We were in Baltimore. This old guy used to show up all the time. I can't remember his name. I've asked Jerry about it. Jerry knows the guy, but can't remember. It was an old black guy, old black wrestler, and he'd show up with his bag. He was 70-something years old at the time. They wasn't going to wrestle, but Vince wanted to give him money, and he didn't want to embarrass him, so he'd tell him to bring his gear down, and he'd bring his gear down, and I'd see Tim White or Arnie go over to him and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, we can't use you today." The guy's 70-something years old. They're not going to use him, but we're going to pay you, and they always pay him several $1,000s. So he was late one day, and Vince said, "Where you been?" And he goes, "Vince, my car broke down." And he told Tim White, he goes, "Well, go get him a car." And so they went and bought him like a brand new Lincoln or a brand new Cadillac or a brand new like luxury car. And so finally, I'd seen this guy so many times. I said, "Timmy, who is that guy?" He goes, "Oh, you got to ask Vince." So I went over to ask Vince. I said, "Vince, we're on the plane that one night." And I said, "Who is that guy that you always give money to?" And he did that all around the countries, we talked about. And he said, "You ever hear that song, Bad, Bad Leroy Brown?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "It might as well have been written about him." And he said, "Well, my daddy had that office there on 14th and I." He said that man would take care, because they were in kind of a bad area. The arena was, the office was, DC, outside of the tourist areas, can be a pretty rough place.
Are you talking about James Dudley?
I believe that's right. Yes. Okay. I believe that's his name.
He's in the WWE fame.
What's that?
He's in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Really? See, I didn't know that. I just always saw him come with his bag, and I believe it's James Dudley. That's right. Yeah.
Respectfully, I know this sounds weird because it's us, but this is a black dude, right? You're talking about?
Yeah, old black guy. Yeah.
James Dudley. Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, that's right. That's him. Yeah. He'd always show me his bag.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was like, wait a
Vince
minute.
Bought him a car one day. Vince bought him a car one day because he was late, and his car broke down. And so Vince, and I asked Vince about him. He told me Bad Leroy Brown. He said my daddy, he always took care of my daddy, and he said my dad said when he sold me the business, he said, "Always take care of that man because he looked out after my life." He said he probably saved my life many times. And so Vince, until the day that man died, took care of that man. It was just a cool thing. That was when I saw that 14th and I. That's what I thought about was James Dudley, but I couldn't remember his name. I'd seen him for so many years, and I always say hi to him, and I'd always speak to him. and he was always very nice. He'd sit in Vince's office. He'd go and sit in Vince's office. He was so comfortable at home around Vince. Vince loved him, but I just always talk to him. And first thing I thought of when I saw that 14th to 9, I think it's great what Vince is doing. I don't know how good of an investor he is because, I worked on Wall Street for a while, and there tends to be people in two different categories. There's usually guys that are operators, or there's guys that are visionaries. And maybe there might be a third, the guys like me that were investors. Vince is an operator. Vince is like Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon can run a bank that has got tentacles in 200 different countries. Jamie Dimon's best probably operator in the world. Vince is an operator. I don't know how good of an investor he is, especially if he's a passive investor. I don't know. I mean, if Vince invests in a media property and he sees it not working well, he's going to take over. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a passive investment company or if it's one where you go in and actually take over and become an operator. If it's an operator, I think that's what Vince wants to do. He wants to be in that chair. He wants to be running something. That's what he loves doing. He used to ask me, he goes, how in the world can you go out there for 4 hours on a golf course? That to him would have been hell. Vince did not want to spend 4 hours not working. So I'm happy that he's back. I hope it's something where he steps in as an operator role for some of these media properties more than just an investor.
I am really interested, and I think the entire wrestling world is to see what's next for Vince McMahon. You thinking about James Dudley for a minute. Do I have it right? Is there a story about him and a straight razor or something like that?
I've heard something very similar about that story, but I'm not. Yes, there was a lot of stories. He was a bad man. He was a tough dude. That's why Vince, because he literally took care of Vince Sr. He was the guy that would walk him in and out of the bad areas. He's make sure he walked in and out of the building with back then he carried a briefcase full of cash. James Dudley was the one who took care of him. Yeah.
Man, what a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I don't think a lot of our audience, hell, even you didn't know that he was in the WWE Hall of Fame. I think he went in the same year Andre did, like 94, like that inaugural class. Like it was,
wow.
I think it meant that much to Vince. Like, hey, we'll put Andre and James Dudley in.
Wow. I got to look that up as soon as I'm done. I'm excited now to look it up. And because I hadn't known his name for years. I'd forgotten his name.
Let's talk a little bit about something that I think is a no-brainer. And on the one hand, I'm like kind of excited about it because I think it's awesome. And the other part of me is kind of sad because I realize it'll never be the same again. Slim Jim has a brand new sponsorship with WWE. They're going to have their logo on the center of the canvas, but they're also going to have Slim Jim imaging and branding on all of the ringside folding tables. So when they pull a table out from under the ring, it's going to say Slim Jim on it. I guess this isn't that big of a deal. It certainly feels like a big deal. And on the one hand, as a business guy, John, I'm thinking this is a no-brainer. Why weren't they doing this the whole time? I love it. But then the wrestling fan of me says, oh, man, I hate that it's changing a little more. There's one more thing that's going to change. And I don't know. I guess I'm just nostalgic about the way it used to be. And now it just feels like there's all these changes with the way the show looks now that it's like it's starting to feel different. What do you think?
It is starting to feel different. And it was Vince McMahon. I just don't think Vince would have ever agreed to put logos on tables, logos on the rings, logos on the turnbuckles. I have no problem with it. That's the future. That's what we're going with. They make a ton of money doing that stuff, by the way. Down in I was just down in Mexico City. AAA makes a lot of their money off sponsorships. They play them during the matches. They actually play them on the big Titan screen up top. It makes sense to have it, but I'm a little bit traditionalist. I kind of like the clean ring and all that stuff, but I think when you're seeing the numbers roll in, you get over it pretty quick.
We should also talk about some of those other numbers that are continuing to roll WWE's way. From what we understand, starting in June, like now, WWE SmackDown was supposed to go back to 2 hours. But as it turns out, they negotiated a new deal, so they've added a third hour. So they've got a third hour they're getting paid for now, which means Instead of there being 4.5 hours of WWE, now there's 5.5. What do you think of a 3-hour SmackDown? Is it too much?
It's a lot. It is a lot. It is tough to do a 3-hour show. You know, I was always on SmackDown, thank goodness. Not always. I was on Raw some, but man, it was so much easier doing 2 hours. 2 hours flies by. I mean, it really does. When you have, a hot main event, you have a good opening match, you have a good crossover match. Those are the three, tent poles that you got to have, and you build around those three tent poles when you have a 2-hour match, 2-hour show, your start, your crossover, and then your ending. With the 3-hour, man, it seems like you've added an eternity. That's a lot of wrestling. I understand it's money, and if you take the money, but that's a lot of creative and a lot of wrestling that you have to cover.
I do want to spend just a minute and talk about what happened this weekend. It's the damnedest thing I've ever seen. Somehow, some way, Alberto Del Rio lost the AAA Mega Championship to El Hijo de Vikingo. And I don't know how they knew on Netflix last week that Vikingo was going to be wrestling Chad Gable for the title this Saturday on YouTube at When Worlds Collide. But I'll be damned if they didn't figure it out somehow. You were there live that night. Man, what a hot crowd it was.
Whoa.
It was so cool to see you doing your thing and the vitriol response that we saw from the crowd. Tell us about your experience Saturday night and I guess the tragedy of Alberto really being cheated out of his title. I mean, if we just want to be honest about it, he took a guitar shot. That's not legal. That's not fair. There was cheating involved, John.
Yep. Vikingo cheated.
Yes.
Typical luchador cheats, in the vein of, say, Rey Mysterio, the deadbeat dad.
Yes.
And, people and guys like El Gran Americano, who took Chad Gable's spot.
Yes.
There's some bad people out there. And Vikingo is one of those people. And I want to tell you, I was in Mexico City. I was in the ring. You couldn't even hear yourself talk. The people were so loud. That was a hell of a show. I mean, an unbelievable show from top to bottom. When you watch this, people watch Worlds Collide coming up, and I'm not promoting, anything. I'm telling you what I saw. This, again, I'm not, just preaching my own book because I'm not going to be there. You're going to be surprised about how good this talent is. I mean, that psycho clown, that Pagano, the hamburger boy, that guy is charismatic. The Guano boy, there's so many guys out there, Messiahs, that have real incredible talent. Mecha Wolf, Del Rio, to me, that was an unbelievable match. If you got a chance to watch it, you should watch it. Del Rio beat up half the security at ringside, slapped him around. He beat up his dad at a talk show the day or two before. That's what sold the arena out. They told me that the arena had not sold out yet. And when Del Rio did that on TV, that's when they sold the place out. He's a draw. He's a hell of a draw. And it was an unbelievable match. But again, Vikingo cheated and won the title, and it's tainted.
It is tainted, and I hope that gets corrected sooner rather than later. John, in all seriousness, I do want to ask your opinion. And again, I know that people don't believe this, but we're telling the truth. You're not under contract to WWE. You don't work for WWE, so you can give an honest answer. Because I know you don't have any inside information. I just want your opinion. Do you think we see Alberto in WWE ever again? Or do you think there is some sort of glass ceiling in place right now that would keep him, quote unquote, just in AAA?
I think probably. You had some WWE guys down there. They bought the company, and there's some WWE guys down there. And I saw him go up to him after and shake his hand. He had an unbelievable performance. And I said a while back, I thought he's the best wrestler in the world, and some people took me to task, and that's fine. That's your opinion. That was my opinion that he's the best wrestler in the world. Watch this match and tell me he isn't. I'm telling you, he is a ring general. I saw him directing people, setting everything up during the day. I mean, he is a freaking ring general. It's unbelievable how good he is. And when the WWE guys saw him, you could tell there was an appreciation. So I hope he is. I hope he is, because I'm a wrestling fan. And I want to see him against guys like Cody, against guys like Jey Uso, against Roman Reigns. I want to see those. I saw him against Dolph down in Mexico. That was amazing. This match with Vikingo, this guy's great. Check him out on this Worlds Collide. You're going to love this guy. And I think him and Chad Gable are going to have a hell of a match. But you got to see Del Rio in this match. I would recommend people go look it up. If you doubt me at all, go look at it. And then if you still think I'm wrong, then that's your opinion, and we have different opinions. But I think he's the best wrestler in the world, and I hope he does end up in WWE.
Go check it out. It is on YouTube. I did get a chance to watch the match over the weekend. I concur with you. It was a fantastic match. Just look for Vikingo and Alberto in YouTube, and you'll see it.
But when he slapped around those security guys, what great heat, man.
Yes.
Oh
yes.
That was surprising. I'm just sitting there watching. All of a sudden, he jack slaps a couple of security guys. This is awesome.
By the way, he's our buddy, but how fun was it to see Vikingo dropkick Dorian? Anytime you see a promoter take a bump, I'm here for it. And when they drop kicked him, I was like, I don't know why this is fun, but it is. I love.
You know what's great about that, Conrad? Dorian is a very beloved figure. People love Dorian, and they love him. They love him backstage. All the boys love him. But when he got drop kicked, all the boys backstage popped. We're all sitting there watching because it's just for some reason when the promoter gets it, it's
funny.
It's funny.
It's funny. Let's talk about what's funny this weekend. It's going to be a big Money in the Bank PLE. The main event is Cody and Jey Uso taking on John Cena and Logan Paul. John, if you were in your predicting mode, as part of your 5 best bets, what would it be that day? Who goes over?
Tag match. I give it to the baby faces, I think. But I don't know, man. This is no one can get hurt in this. No one's going to walk away from this and say that it was bad. If whoever wins, I don't think it doesn't hurt whoever loses. So I think it's a coin flip. But I think the baby faces. Heels have got a lot of heat lately. I think the baby faces go over, but I don't think it matters. I think it's going to be an unbelievable match.
We've got Lyra working with Becky Lynch for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. You got a prediction there?
Yeah, I think Becky Lynch. I think she's coming back. She's incredibly popular. Lyra's done a great job, though.
We still see that there's still some Money in the Bank qualifier matches still to happen tonight on Monday Night Raw. But right now we know on the women's side of things, we've got Rhea Ripley, Alexa Bliss, Roxanne Perez, Naomi. We got a handful of folks that are already announced and ready to rock here. Do you think there's an early favorite, at least from you, for the women's Money in the Bank?
No, I don't. I can't pick one out of this. I've always loved Rhea Ripley, Naomi, Alexa. I mean, we have some really incredibly talented, I say we as wrestling fans, incredibly talented women. I mean, it's just unbelievable how good these women are. I've been going around all these independent shows, doing different stuff, throwing trash cans at leprechauns and clotheslining people. And I'm watching some incredible matches, and I don't remember back in the day the depth of talent being as good as it is now. I guess it's the training schools. But you go to these independent shows and you see some incredible talent. I mean, I was down in Mexico. That was the whole card was just loaded with talent. Women are terrific. The guys, I mean, we have some incredible women. You look back at it and go, why did it take so long? Why did it take so long to get this whole women's division? They're so freaking good.
We've also got the men's doing the Money in the Bank ladder match. We got Penta, Seth Rollins, LA Knight, Solo Sikoa, Andrade. A lot of talent here. Does one stand out to you as the logical winner? Oh,
I'd give it to Penta. Not a doubt in my mind. Just seeing him carry that Money in the Bank, I think it would be awesome. He's such a popular. All those guys are terrific. But not a doubt in my mind, I'd give it to Penta.
Well, no matter what, I hope they've got their working boots on. And speaking of working boots, you need to be working with Brunt. We're big fans of Brunt here on the program, and you'll see why once you try it out. I mean, I just love their founder, and I love their story. He grew up blue collar, and actually all of his buddies in the trades are the guys who are really encouraging him to go create a brand that was for them. So Eric did exactly that, man. All of the Brunt products here are actually named after the guys he grew up with. And the result is you really get to fix the problem that you've always faced with work boots. Like, you have to choose your work boots, which means you sacrifice comfort or durability. So if they feel good, they're not going to last. So they're going to tear up quickly. But man, if they last, they're just going to wreck your feet. And we've all had like that really uncomfortable break-in period where it feels like you've almost got to torture your feet before you can actually wear your boots. You don't have to do any of that with Brunt. They come comfortable right out of the box. And no matter what the working guy in your household is looking for, they got it. And they got it in time for Father's Day. Whether your dad's looking for waterproof or safety toe or soft toe or pull on or lace up, whatever it is, Brunt can hook it up. And by the way, they don't just do boots, they do all of your workwear stuff. They got heavy duty work pants, weather resistant jackets. And again, there's no break in period for the boots. They come comfortable. And by the way, they even give dad a trial period. Check this out. Brunt didn't just try to make a durable work boot. They reinvented comfort for the hardest workers out there. And for Father's Day, not only does Brunt have special discount bundles, but our listeners are also getting $10 off whenever they use the code WRESTLE at checkout. Just head to bruntworkwear.com and use the code WRESTLE and you're all set. Now, after you purchase, they're going to ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. So, John, we've got a big weekend coming up, and we know that it's going to be a AAA and a Money in the Bank day. But I got to assume that one of the things we're going to be talking about before you know it is Night of the Champions, and that's going to happen in Saudi Arabia at the end of June, so about 4 weeks away. John, when you take a look at that, I want to know what you think about this, because maybe I'm just sleuthing and maybe I've just been thinking too much. But we've heard that Crown Jewel next year is not going to be a Saudi property. It's going to Australia. So they're going to call the Crown Jewel show. That's what it'll be named, even though it's in Australia. We've just heard that WWE has pulled WrestleMania away from New Orleans. And there's lots of rumors that Vegas is going to get it, but we've actually got a confirmation that there's a future WrestleMania that Vegas is going to get. So as of now, they've not yet announced where WrestleMania is going to be. And a little birdie last week suggested to me that, hey, WrestleMania is going to be in Saudi Arabia next year. And I thought that sounded ridiculous until Eric Bischoff reminded me, oh, yeah, they moved Crown Jewel to Australia. And hey, wait a minute. They haven't announced where WrestleMania is yet. Do you think they announce on June 28th when they're doing Night of the Champions in Saudi Arabia that WrestleMania next year could be in Saudi Arabia? Is that possible, John?
Yes, it's possible. No doubt about it. What time would it be here? It'd be a noon show, right?
It would be an afternoon show here. Yeah. So Saudi shows mean afternoon viewing here.
Yeah, so the time is not that bad. It's not like, I guess Japan has a problem for pay-per-view because of the time change would be, early in the morning or something.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so there's some issues. And with the UK, it's so early in the day because of, 5-hour time change from the East Coast. Europe, is even more so. Yeah, I think it works. I think it makes perfect sense. We could not do pay-per-views overseas before because we were reliant too much on the North American market. You look at like TV contracts in Mexico, like AAA and CMLL. They don't make a ton of money out of Mexico. They don't make a ton of money off their contracts. You got to get to the American market. Look at, say, rugby teams in Europe. They're selling out big arenas in the top 14 in the Premiership. They're not making money because they don't have good TV contracts. You need the American market for those TV contracts. We needed the American market for the pay-per-view contracts, or specifically the North American markets. We had Canada in as well. But now, because of streaming and because people have bought subscriptions, you can go anywhere you want. So now it opens up the entire world to do shows from, because now people can get it on delay, or you've already got their money. I know it sounds a little bit Machiavellian, but that's what it is. And now you can do things like this. I think it makes a lot of sense. And I wouldn't doubt that they end up in Saudi Arabia with WrestleMania.
It's going to be interesting to see if that really is what they do. The other thing that I think I've maybe put together is we've heard that Goldberg has said he's getting ready for his last match. We've heard him say that he's training because it's coming up later this year. We've even heard him say that his last match is going to be down south. Saturday night's main event is going to be on July 12th, the same day that AEW runs their first stadium show here in America. And they've announced Saturday night's main event live on NBC and on Peacock, and it's in Atlanta. John, it sure does feel an awful lot like NBC on the night of AEW's first stadium show is going to air Goldberg's last match.
They want to poke the bear. They want to poke the bear. I mean, you want to pick a fight with those guys? I mean, look, Vince did this forever, and he'd run territories. He'd run in, Bill Watts would set up a free show somewhere else in town this has been going on forever, and Hunter was trained by the guy that was the best in the world at it. And Hunter may actually be better. This is remarkable. When he had Bischoff that was going up to the MLW and was going to host that. And all of a sudden, 2 days before, he ends up as NXT chairman that day. They're running NXT that day. 2 days before the show. This is just front running is all it is. WWE, there's nobody been better at WWE for 4 or 5 decades. And I think they're better now than they've ever been.
Did you see that last week NXT announced that they're running the 2300 arena a week before
yes, right
AEW
before
starts their residency?
I mean, this is brutal. Brutal. Listen, and when I say brutal, I don't mean in a bad way. I applaud them. This is business. This is just business. I mean, if you got a coffee store in town, this other guy that is trying to run you out of business got a coffee store, you do the same thing to him. He puts up a 79-cent morning coffee. You put out a 69-cent morning coffee and serve it 15 minutes before. That's exactly what WWE is doing. They're just better at it. They're business people. I mean, these guys are sharks. Absolute sharks. And I mean that in a very good way.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. It's also going to be interesting to see what happens with the new podcast over at podcastheatwrestling.com. I don't know if you saw this, John, but earlier today it was announced that Todd Gordon has a brand new podcast that starts this Friday, June 6th. He's the ECW founder. He's the godfather of Extreme. And he's going to be telling you all the untold stories and the behind-the-scenes birth and rise of ECW. It all premieres this Friday, where Todd is going to open up and share his relationship with one of ECW's most influential figures, of course, the late, great Sabu. Be sure to check out Todd is Pod with Todd Gordon each and every week starting this Friday, and it's totally free at podcastheatwrestling.com. That's podcastheatwrestling.com. While you're there, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss them when they're live. How about that, man? A little more content coming to the wrestling universe. Todd Gordon telling some ECW tales.
And great content. I mean, when I've been in places, and I know you probably have too, Conrad, where you're talking to people and it's like normal people, not wrestling people. Not that we're not normal. We're probably not normal. And you tell them some story, and it's not even that bad a story, and they look at you, and you can tell they don't believe you and go, look, I'm not even telling you the bad stuff. If I told you the stuff that actually happened, you would think that we're all Satan, and you wouldn't believe us. Also, you would think that it just didn't happen. ECW was wilder than us. This is going to be fun. This is going to be a great podcast. This is going to be a lot of fun. When you hear some of these stories and some of the stuff that went on backstage, it's going to be shocking. You're going to have a hard time believing it, but it's true. It's part of the business. That's one thing I love about it. That's why I love talking about the old part of the business, because when times were before cell phones, things were pretty crazy.
Todd is Pod. Check it out. podcastheatwrestling.com this Friday. Hey, our topic today is Booker T, John. And, I don't think a lot of people have maybe even put this together. But I know that Booker T and Stevie Ray were actually a few years ahead of you. But when you're first getting started on the Texas indie scene, you're on the Texas indie scene with a very young Harlem Heat, right?
Yeah, Ebony Experience was what they were called back then. Yeah, absolutely. Stevie and Lash, and I never called him Lash, Stevie and Booker. Yeah, they were tremendous. They'd trained with Ivan a little bit, Putski, and another trainer I think they had a little heat with, but they trained with Ivan Putski, and were breaking in Dallas. They're driving up from Houston every day, 249 miles each way. And Booker would show up with that huge Gordon Gekko cell phone. The thing was this long. I don't even know if it was connected to anything. I don't even know if he had a subscription for it, but he had it with him. They were terrific guys. You knew then these guys were going to be somewhere huge and soon. There was no doubt about it.
I do want to ask you, whenever we do any sort of research online, we can't find actual match data that shows that you were in the ring, like in a match with Booker T, until you guys were both in the WWF. Is that right? Is that possible?
No, I tagged with him overseas, but I
Okay.
don't think I was against him. I don't think so. I don't think I ever worked with him and Stevie. I don't think they were in pretty good angles. You know,
Yeah.
Gary Hart loved those guys, man. I mean, loved them. I just saw some of your notes that said the only thing that ever nice about me in the notes that was sent was from Gary Hart's book. Of course, it wasn't from one of your guys, from Gary Hart's guy. That he said something really nice about it, which was I didn't know that he had written that. That made me feel really good today because I think the world of Gary. And I got to room with Gary a couple times down south when we were traveling. And nicest man in the world. What a brilliant guy. He always had the business blade, Sweet Lucy, you know, underneath in the cigarette case. He had a blade in the bottom half of it, you know, in case a fan ever, you know, that man was he really was from the bad side of Chicago.
We should talk about Gary Hart because he wrote about Booker T in his book. He said, after their debut in the GWF, Gary thought it would be a great idea to put the Ebony Experience in a program with the Youngbloods, who were Ricky Romero's kids. Ricky and I always had a nice relationship, and I would do anything I could to help get his two boys over. But when Gray suggested that feud to me, I had to sit down with him. There are opponents here for the Youngbloods, but not the Ebony Experience. Booker T and Stevie Ray look like they could kill anyone they encounter, and the Youngbloods are two flabby little kids. You want the people to buy this as a continuing feud? It's not even in the realm of possibility. However, Gray insisted the feud go on, so it did. From that moment on, I was on Booker T and Stevie Ray's case, telling them to send a tape to the WWF and WCW. I made it very clear to them that anything they could send out, they should keep my name off of, especially to Atlanta, because as far as the office was concerned, having me as their manager might be more of a hindrance than a help. They took my advice, both sent tapes out, and got hired in WCW as Harlem Heat. What do you think of that? Do you think that was too harsh of a response from Gary Hart to say, man, if they don't see the value in pushing you or promoting you right, send those tapes out? Clearly it worked for Harlem Heat. I mean, Booker T and Stevie Ray are better served for having been in WCW, but what do you make of this advice that Gary was doling out here based on believability?
Gary was a stand-up dude, and you know he was going to do the right thing for the right guys. You know, he walked out after one of the Von Erich matches, I think in '84, with the Freebirds because he thought the Freebirds were mistreated. The Freebirds didn't even walk out. Gary walked out. He's a stand-up human being. Gary was a good dude. I could see how the advice that he's given them, which would hurt Texas, but would help Stevie and Booker. The Youngbloods were good workers, but compare them to remember Stevie and Booker were freaking massive.
Yes.
I mean, Stevie, I don't know how big his arms were, but at that point, they looked they're freaking 22 inches around. I mean, Stevie was freaking huge and could talk. So could Booker. I mean, Booker was big, but Stevie was a freaking giant and built and could move. I mean, there aren't many people you could put against them that made it realistic. And so I agree with what he said. You know, the Youngbloods were good workers, but they dwarfed them. You needed some big, rough, tough cowboys. You needed a Black Bart out there, you know, who could be rough and tough, and you could believe that he could be out there with these two incredible athletes who looked like they walked off a stage of filming Gladiator or something. You know, at least walked off an NFL football field. I mean, it was tough when you had guys that looked like this, especially in basically an independent, you know, which Sport Zone was at the time, I guess you'd probably have to say. Not many guys you can put them with. There's not much believable you can do with those guys because they look so freaking good.
Gary Hart wrote about you in his book, as you mentioned, and I want to read what he said. He said, I was drawn to any young talent that I saw something special in. For example, when John Layfield first walked into the dressing room and I saw him, I told him if I was only 20 years younger, I would come out of retirement and you and I would make a fortune together. With John, I just knew he had it by looking at him. A guy like me can literally see when they walk through the door. Also knew his tag team partner, Bobby Duncombe Jr., very well because I managed his father, blah, 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 blah. But it was pretty nice to hear him say that you had it. What was your first impression of Gary Hart? I don't think, you know, he wasn't in WCW on TV very long. So if you didn't grow up as a world-class fan or some of the other territories, if you just grew up as a WWF guy or a WCW kid, you probably didn't see much Gary at all. Tell us why you enjoyed Gary's work so much.
Because I grew up as a world-class fan. And so I saw him through all the years with Kabuki. We brought Kabuki in. Man, that was game-changing. That's when the business really started taking off in Dallas, was when Gary Hart brought Kabuki in. That was the first leg. Then when the Freebirds come in against the Von Erich boys, that's when it took off. But Gary Hart and Kabuki was the first one that started making the territory rise. And Gary was in everything. Gary was all over TV. So when I got to meet Gary, it was literally meeting one of your idols. And he was so nice to me. It was just shocking. Gary was just the nicest man. Like I say, I roomed with him a couple times. I rode with him. It was so awesome. I just remember sitting there sometimes thinking, I'm riding with Gary Hart. I just wanted to call somebody before he had cell phones.
Were you able to watch WCW when they get first signed to WCW, the Harlem Heat, I mean?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. Yeah. Now Booker and I had gone to Japan and Korea a couple times together first. So we had a lot more history there before they ended up going to WCW. Stevie didn't go. Stevie was, I don't know for what reason, it was just Booker booked. And I think Stevie went, but he didn't go the tours that I went.
So when you're watching them make their WCW debut, I'm sure you've at least heard the original creative had them coming out in chains with Colonel Robert Parker, who's dressed like a damn plantation owner.
Yeah.
Obviously, somebody thought better of that and they cut it. But still, the presentation of them in Harlem Heat, them with Colonel Robert Parker, or them with Sherry, it feels like their managers were often, I don't know, kind of out of left field, unnecessary. What did you think of their WCW presentation compared to what you had seen in Global?
They liked Sherry, and of course, you like Colonel Parker. They weren't with him that long. They really liked Sherry. But from what I talked to Booker about, she was very nice. She's a legend. She was terrific at her job. I thought it was out of place, and these boys both could talk. I mean, there's no reason to have a manager.
Yes,
Booker does commentary now, and Stevie could talk as well. But they both could do incredible promos. I mean, they drew money in Dallas, and that was almost impossible. They were one of the only group of guys, anything, that drew money. And they drew money in Dallas, and they could talk. So you didn't need these managers. I don't know what they were thinking. They thought for some reason that these two big athletes couldn't talk or whatever else. They obviously didn't do any research on them, because they certainly didn't need a manager. They didn't need anything.
It's crazy to me to think, that. I mean, they are the most decorated tag team. Booker T is the most decorated wrestler in WCW history. And as you said, he does commentary, and his brother has a podcast, and they had managers. It's like, it's unnecessary. But either way,
it was just some old dumbass, some old guy. I don't know who it was, booking at the time. That these got these kids come in here that obviously they can't talk, and I don't know. I'm not insinuating racism or anything like that. Sure. You got some dumbasses that when kids come in, they think white or black doesn't matter. All that, I'll just put them with the manager. They don't know what they're doing. How about you find out first? I mean, this was pretty stupid. Whoever the booker was, it was an idiot to put a manager with them.
Hey, why do you think, these guys pretty well. Why do you think that Booker enjoyed more singles success than Stevie Ray did? Like, obviously, they were a dominant tag team, but when they separated and they kind of went their own way on camera, it does feel like Booker T enjoyed more singles success than Stevie Ray. Why do you think that is?
I think options is what it was. I think Booker got more options, and Stevie was fine going back and running his businesses that he has and things like that. I think it was options. I always thought Stevie would be a world champion somewhere because he looked so freaking good. I mean, Stevie, when he was young, I say he's big now. I've seen him since on his podcast. But man, when he was 30 years old, my God, man, there was nobody in the world that looked like that guy. And he could talk. He could work. Tough guy. Everything you want in a world champion. Stevie had it. And so I don't know why Stevie didn't get the run. I think it was options. I think Stevie was either out when Booker had a chance to go off as a singles. I think that's what it was.
How close of friends were you and Booker? I mean, did you guys stay in touch? Like when you're in the WWF and he's in WCW, are y'all in any communication?
Some, not much. We didn't have cell phones. That weren't that big back then. So people didn't text or anything. And so no, I would see him at times and talk to him, and I always send him a message. When I had somebody was going to see him. So we were pretty good friends. but we didn't stay in touch. But plus, I lived in Texas. I lived just about 3 hours north of him, so I'd run into all kinds of people that would see him, and vice versa. So there was a lot of commonality there.
When you're on the road in the WWF, are you able to, see any of Booker's single stuff? Or are you just hearing about it? Like, were you watching when he won the world title, or did you have a chance to see that, or are you just on the road and that's not even possible at that point?
Yeah, I didn't see it live. Obviously I didn't know what was going to happen, and we were working the same times that their show was on, and so we didn't see a lot of their stuff. I didn't see hardly any other stuff, and people didn't VCR stuff back then, or DVR. I don't think we had DVRs, VCRs. Last thing you want to do when you're on the road for 14, 20 days is come home and watch a bunch of wrestling of your competition or something, or your friends, whoever. Last thing you want to do. And so, no, I didn't see it. I think I saw some clips of it, but that was about it. I'm very happy for him, obviously, but just saw some clips.
We do want to talk about what happens when WCW gets bought out by the WWF. Booker T had about 8 months and about $495,000 left on his contract, according to stuff that has been published since. And the narrative has always been that Booker took a buyout, which would make sense given his earning potential as WCW champion for the WWF. He probably could have exceeded that. But according to the contract info that was released in the WCW's racial discrimination lawsuits, Booker did not have a no-cut contract that would require a buyout to go to the WWF. So I guess that narrative that was out there wasn't actually true, but either way, the point is Booker T wanted to be in the WWF, and I think it's fair to say that he exceeded all expectations. Don't you, John?
100%. Yeah. Like, I interviewed Booker when I had the Legends with JBL on the WWE Network, and it was one of my favorite interviews. That one with Ron and Bruno. Those are my three favorites. But Booker, told the story when he was, I guess, 12 or 13 years old in his house, and his mother had gone up in the attic to fix something, and she fell through the ceiling and it ended up killing her. And that's when Booker ended up by himself, and he ended up in the house by himself. He was like 13 years old, and he didn't have any guardian, anything. He took the car that was out there, drove down to the gas station, filled up some stuff with water one day, just to have something to drink. At 13, he was basically homeless. Then if he kind of gets taken in, how Booker is alive is a miracle. He ended up in prison. Where else? I mean, there's not much chance that may have saved his life. Booker is a stand-up human being. He knows how far he's come, and he believes in himself. You can't do what Booker did, a 1 in a billion story, and make it like he made it without believing in yourself. And I think that happened when WCW got bought out. Booker looked at it and thought, I can sit home and make money, or I can go make a huge name for myself. There's no doubt Booker does that 10 times out of 10, and he makes it 10 times out of 10.
Man, I love hearing the passion in your voice talking about Booker T, because I know you believe it. I know he's your friend, and I know that Booker knows that when he wants to get his shucky ducky on, he goes to BlueChew.com. Blue Chew Max is here, sucker! Now, can you dig that? It's here, and it actually combines the active ingredients of Viagra and Cialis into one chewable. That's like the Harlem Hangover when Booker T and Stevie Ray got together. You see, Blue Chew Max is a combo that acts fast and lasts, daddy. So Hulk Hogan, we coming for you. Actually, we're not. But Blue Chew's free your first month. That's right. Great sex is just a few clicks away. Go sign up right now at BlueChew.com. Consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, they'll get your ding-dong working great. Yeah, you'll receive your prescription within a few days. Blue Chew's tablets are made right here in the USA. They're prepared to ship directly to your door, and it's all online, which means there's no trips to the doctor's office. There's no awkward conversation, and there's no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Just real hard penis. Make your life easier by getting harder, and discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use the promo code WRESTLE. Just pay $5 shipping. That's 5 times $1 shipping That's promo code WRESTLE. That's BlueChew.com. Visit BlueChew.com for more details on important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast and John's Wiener. Didn't you dig that, sucker? Hey, let's talk about it. You want to talk about bad days at the office? Every little kid, when they watched wrestling, they hoped that one day they could be in a WWF ring. They could square up with the top star like a Hulk Hogan or an Andre the Giant. Everybody going to wrestling school in that era imagined that they were standing toe-to-toe with the main event of WrestleMania and what that must feel like as the flashbulbs go off. And now he's finally done it. Booker T is here, the former WCW World Champion. He's going to debut in the World Wrestling Federation. We're about to start the Invasion angle, which just this fantasy booking has kept the After magazine industry in business for decades. And now it's finally going to happen. And you're finally going to get to stand toe-to-toe with the main event, the big star, the head honcho of WrestleMania, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And on your first night there, you get to put him through a table and break his hand and cause him to miss television and paydays and pay-per-views. And you've got to be feeling like you have fucked up your big opportunity on your first night. Golly, what a bad spot Booker T was in here, right?
I saw Booker wrestle from when he first started, wrestle some of the greatest legends ever. I saw him go to Japan and wrestle some of these old, tough Japanese legends. We saw him go to Korea, and I saw Lee Wan Pyo still as Spinaroonie, and he wrestled these great legends. Weren't nearly as good as Japanese legends, but big legends in Korea. Then I saw him in WCW with all these guys that one after another. Booker doesn't get camera shy. Booker doesn't get the jitters. Booker doesn't, and then he gets out there with Stone Cold and hurts our meal ticket of all things. Like, Booker, anybody but Steve. That's our mortgage. That's our rent payment. That's the guy who's selling out all the arenas. Unbelievable. Just, horrible luck. Booker is one of the safest wrestlers there is. I mean, it's not like, Booker comes out there and guy from WCW is not training. Booker was then one of the greatest of all time. Very safe guy. And he gets out there with our meal ticket, the hottest guy, I guess, in the history of wrestling. I don't know, Hogan and Londos maybe before him, and breaks his hand. I'm like, oh my God, what a nightmare to happen to one of we all felt the same way. Of all people, for Booker to do this, because we all love Booker, to hurt Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What's crazy too is, and listen, we both love Wade at the Torch, and he does such a great job. But here's what he wrote at the time. Booker T, either overexcited or careless or just plain green, tosses Steve Austin past the table Austin was supposed to land on. Careless, just plain green. Okay, overexcited maybe, but the other two, come on, man.
He's had 5 world championships. Yes. He's had as many tag team championships probably as the Road Warriors. He's wrestled incredible matches for a decade or longer. None of that applies. It was a stupid mistake. Things happen. You do stuff over and over and over, and all of a sudden, one time out of 1,000, you do something wrong, and that's what it was. It was just inexplicable. It wasn't because of nerves. It wasn't because of being green. Oh my God, he was one of the best wrestlers in the world then.
Hey, so I want to ask you about this because it said this night when it's feared that Austin broke his hand. When the x-rays come back, nothing's broken, so it's not as bad as we thought. But allegedly, there were some hurt feelings and maybe some heat on Booker T. As the story goes, after the match that night, Booker T left the building. He didn't stick around to see if Austin was okay. He didn't call and check on him. So I guess the next day at TV, management had a talk with Booker T about it. They put Booker and Steve together, and as you could imagine, everybody said all the right things, and everybody was cool, and it was fine. But do you remember there being any sort of preliminary heat on this new guy injuring our top star and not sticking around to check on him? Was there heat in that way, or was that something that was kept really close to the vest back then?
If there was heat there, it wasn't to the boys. The boys didn't know anything about it. I was there.
Okay.
I was there in the locker room for all of it. Booker was a friend of mine, so I had my ears open. Obviously, if I heard any of it, I would have been shocked, and I would have tried to stop any of it. I didn't hear any of it, so I don't buy any of that. Now, there may have been some heat behind closed doors. There may have been some things discussed. I don't know how they would know that either, but I was there, and I didn't hear zero. I heard absolutely zero. There was not heat from the boys. From what I saw, there wasn't heat from Stone Cold. Of course, he didn't sell anything anyway, but there wasn't any heat from Stone Cold. Him and Booker certainly became great friends. I assume they were good friends then, but I didn't hear any of that. I don't believe that's true.
Here's what's bad. That's how we debut Booker T at King of the Ring. And then the following week, so 8 days later, is Tacoma. This is the very bad WCW in the WWE on Monday Night Raw angle. They tried exactly once, where I believe it was Scott Hudson and Arn Anderson doing commentary for Booker T versus Buff Bagwell. And the Observer says, if there's any lesson that should have been learned from the XFL, it's that you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And the first impression of WCW and the most important angle in the history of the business on July 2nd in Tacoma was downright scary, to the point that reevaluation of the current plans have to be considered. The crowd live totally rejected the Booker T Buff Bagwell match, which was put on as the Raw main event. One can blame Bagwell for putting on a bad performance and T for not rising to the occasion, but the crowd had already decided to hate it long before the bell rang to start the match. There were chants of boring and this match sucks and Goldberg. Listen, you were there. What do you remember about the big idea, WCW on Monday Night Raw, and the fans wanting nothing to do with it?
It wasn't bad. It'd have to improve to be bad. It'd have to improve to suck. That thing was terrible. That whole match was horrible. Booker acknowledges that. That match was terrible. It was such a unbelievable letdown. We're watching in the back, and the boys were just shocked about how bad it was. Because we're all rooting for, certainly for Booker, and we didn't know Marcus that well, but we're rooting for Booker, and that match was horrible. It didn't live up to anything in wrestling. I don't care if the people are shitting on it. Your job's a performer to go out there and get them. Sorry. You got to figure out a way to get them. Heel on them. Babyface on them. Do something. They didn't do anything. I say they. It wasn't Booker. It was Bagwell. It was horrible.
Let me ask you this. The night before they did this Tacoma show, there was a house show in Spokane, Washington, and that's actually the first time that Booker T wrestled Buff Bagwell at a WWF show. It was like a dry run at a house show. And supposedly, none of the road agents thought it was a good match, except Pat Patterson. Pat was there, and he thought it was a good match. So that's what they went with on Monday night. Do you remember being in Spokane at that house show? And was it interesting or different to have it announced or at least positioned as, hey, we're going to have a WCW match on a WWF show? I realize at that point it's all the same company. It's silly. We're splitting hairs. But if we're introducing Booker T and Buff Bagwell as characters from the other show, but now you're seeing them on the stage of this show, that feels like that would feel weird or different, right?
Yeah, I didn't think it made sense to have two WCW guys work, and I understand we were in, Atlanta the next week or something. And look, I want to stick up for, Bagwell a little bit. He's gotten all the heat in this, and I think deservedly so. But, Bagwell didn't understand the WWE style. And, I think Bagwell would have been okay. They just threw him out there, and he didn't, Booker had worked a million places. I think Booker was going to be fine. We knew he was, but I just don't think Marcus understood WWE style of what, we had Stone Cold out there going 30 minutes at 1,000,000 miles an hour. You can't put a guy in a rear chin lock and say they're going to come, because not with Steve, not with Stone Cold's on the card. And so I just thought that the whole thing was, if you got two guys, like when Stone Cold Scorpio and Benoit had that match, like in 93 or 94 in WCW, that changed the world, and then you had Van Dam and Sabu doing all that stuff in ECW. That changed the world. You could put those guys out there in a match, and be from different places. Nobody knows there, and you can put them in a main event anywhere, and all of a sudden they would electrify the place. But when you're putting two WCW guys out there, as hot as our WWE guys were, I thought it just put them at a huge disadvantage. I don't know why you wouldn't put them out there against WWE guys.
The Torch would say the first words out of Vince McMahon's mouth at the post-Raw production meeting were, "What the effing deal with that match? That was the shits. There's a ton of heat on Buff Bagwell within the company for poor performance in the ring and out of the ring, attitude problems, etc." So you've already touched on that. Buff's kind of been positioned as a scapegoat and all this, but it is interesting to think that, seemingly this all derails Buff Bagwell's career forever.
Yeah.
But Booker T is able to overcome it. I mean, this changes the angle. This changes the presentation. This match changed the biggest angle in wrestling history and cost one guy his job or his career at a really young age. And yet somehow the other guy overcomes it and is a world champion multiple times after. And that doesn't even feel like that's real or possible, John.
Well, Booker ends up in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I mean, it's two different talents. I mean, Bagwell I think Bagwell was a good talent, but Booker was extraordinary. Booker was a different level talent, and that's not taking anything away from Marcus or Buff. I don't think I've ever called him anything. I don't think, but Buff, because Buff was a very good talent. Booker was a generational talent. He was that good, and so you knew right away that you're going to keep Booker. I don't care how bad that match was. It wasn't Booker. And you're going to stick him out there. And he did the stuff he did with Stone Cold in the supermarket. Oh, my God, man. There aren't many. I don't know anybody else alive that could have done that as good as Booker did it. He's a generational talent. And I think explains why there was a scapegoat. Bagwell was a scapegoat. He gets fired. And Booker goes on and becomes a two-time Hall of Famer.
It's just amazing to me. I mean, you think about it. This is the most anticipated angle of all time. And after one bad night, it's over. And so was Bagwell's career. But, man, Booker T, the cream really rose to the top, dude. He could not be denied. Even after all of that, against all odds, he still does it. And, man, it couldn't have been easy because it's said a few weeks later that Vince actually holds a meeting just for all the WCW wrestlers. And he talks about what their backstage policies and procedures and best practices are. And he even basically says that some of the folks have not been sociable, like Chuck Palumbo and Stacy Keibler and Sean O'Hare. And he even specifically points out Booker T leaving before making sure that Steve Austin was okay when Austin's hand was injured at the pay-per-view. And there's a report in the Torch that says that some of the WCW wrestlers felt like Vince was talking down to them, John. He acted like we were uncultured rednecks, one wrestler has told friends. He came off like, what the hell have I bought? I want to ask you, John, in general, do you think there was at any point any buyer's remorse with Vince? Obviously he got it for a song, but clearly it wasn't meeting his expectations. Do you think he ever regretted buying WCW or toying with this idea at all?
No, because he got the library. I think that's, that was worth it to him. It's only like $3 million or something. It wasn't much.
Yeah.
But he got the library, which was worth it, for the WWE network. And so, no, I don't think there was buyer's remorse as far as what he paid and what he got. But he didn't get WCW. Those guys you mentioned were really good talents. Sean O'Hare, Palumbo, Stacy Keibler, Buff Bagwell, all those guys were very good talents. Really good talents. But we didn't get the guys that did the invasion on them. We didn't get the NWO. We got the parts of the NWO that were part of it later, but not the original guys. We didn't get Hall and Nash. We didn't get Hogan. And we didn't get Brett back. We didn't get Goldberg. We got some huge stars. We got Booker and DDP. We got a bunch of great stars. But we didn't get WCW. There was no invasion. There was no, you're expecting an invasion to come, but you're expecting Hall and Nash to be there. You're expecting Hogan to be there. You're expecting Goldberg to spear somebody. The guys who were on all the segments of the television weren't there. And I think that's what Vince regretted. You can't, make the NWO out of somebody that's not the NWO. And I think that's what Vince regretted.
Well, I do want to ask you, as far as locker room etiquette, I know that we've talked about the Steve Austin Booker T deal. Did you feel like the locker room etiquette was off when they tried to integrate with the WWE, or is that just overhyped? Was there a problem assimilating? Like, were there policies or best practices that the WWE did that those guys in WCW just weren't privy to or they didn't do?
They had a different culture than we did. And so it was a little different, but there wasn't heat there. I mean, I was in the locker room with Palumbo and O'Hara a bunch because me and Ron worked with them. Super nice guys, really nice guys. There was no issue as far as me and Ron were concerned. I don't think there was with anybody else. They were just new guys. I mean, it's not like we hate you because you're not one of us. We're all the boys. If things had been different, we'd be working with WCW and we'd be the ones coming into WWE when they got bought. It just happened that we ended up with WWE and the roles were reversed. So I don't remember there being a problem with especially those guys you mentioned. They were fine in the dressing room. The boys liked them. They were fun guys. They went out with us. They were fun guys.
I just know sometimes guys can get territorial about their spot. The idea,
of course, about the spot. Yeah, of course, about the spot. Now that's different. I mean, that's different about the spot. I'm talking about just the integration of the boys being the boys. They were fine. But as far as the spot, yeah, anybody that comes in new, you kind of side eye them to.
Yes, I do want to ask. When you start working with some of these guys, and again, we're not acting like they're rookies. They're some of the all-time greats. But it is worth addressing. WCW had a different size ring than the WWF, and the ropes were different. And, at least at first, once upon a time, the rings were built differently. I know that maybe has changed over time, but certainly we've heard that, it was easier to take a bump on a WCW ring than a WWF ring. But the ropes being actual ropes and not cables and the size difference, it does feel like if you're in a rhythm and you have some muscle memory about a certain number of steps in order to do a move, that takes a minute to retrain your brain about, or am I overthinking that, John?
They got a little lucky because our stiff rings had been replaced already. I mean, we had the rings, it was Dick Ebersol from NBC, one of the tighter rings because they thought they moved too much on Saturday Night's Main Event. But he had Yokozuna, who was 700 pounds, bumping in it. There's a big difference. Those rings, when I first got there, I mean, they were like concrete. They were unbelievably hard. It was the hardest rings I'd ever. Reminds people talk about the Kill ring down in St. Louis. It had to be that ring couldn't have been any harder than the rings we had when we first got there. So the rings were good rings when WCW came in. The size didn't matter, but I've been in a lot of rings, from 22-foot rings to rings that had 2-foot aprons. You adjust pretty quick. It's not that big a deal. I mean, and these guys are all athletes. When you're talking about guys like you mentioned, guys like Bill DeMott, guys like Chuck Palumbo, Sean O'Hare, I mean, those guys, Booker T, DDP, those guys were really good athletes, terrific athletic guys. I don't think they had much problem. I'd be surprised if they said they did, but I don't think they had much problem.
Eventually, we see Booker T sort of get pushed out of the WCW title picture. He's going to become more of a comedic persona. So we're going to see some tag stuff and just some different iterations for Booker T. But he does get a pretty high-profile WrestleMania match in 2003. That'll be the WrestleMania in Seattle. He's going to be working against the Raw Heavyweight Champion Triple H. People have been really, really critical of the presentation and some of the language and stuff like that. Did you think at the time that they were taking this stuff too far? Are we creating content for the moment?
I don't know if you saw what I just said in Mexico. Are you really asking me if they took it too far?
I love you for that. Thank you for that. Well said.
Look, I was there for the whole thing. I know what people have said and all this crap. It's either a work or it isn't. And if it is a work, then there's nothing wrong with it. If it's not a work, there's a lot wrong with it. There's a lot wrong with it if it's not a work. A lot wrong with me if it's not a work. But it's a work. And you got guys being bad guys. Was it in bad taste? Of course it was. That's called being a heel. And I don't have any issue with that. And Booker understood it was a work too. I remember when I do some stuff with Eddie and some different guys, and I was going to say something really strong. Occasionally, I would give him a heads up. Is that okay? Or sometimes with Eddie, he was giving me stuff that was almost beyond strong, and I'm like, Eddie, you're going to get me killed. And he'd go, oh, essay, good heat. But I would run stuff by him. I remember when I wrestled with Shawn Michaels, he asked me a couple things not to say about his family, and I didn't. And it wasn't a big deal. But when everybody understands it's a work, I don't have a problem with that. And those guys who look back in history and go, oh, he did this because Triple H is a Hunter, or Paul Levesque is a bad guy. Give me a freaking break. It's a work.
Well, listen, I'm not arguing any of that at all. But I would say you used to talk a lot of smack, but then in the end, you lost. That guy won. Yep. And in this case, Triple H his character was talking down to the Booker T character, and then he beat the Booker T character. I feel like we all had the natural assumption that, okay, he's, taking the L right now, but in the end, he's going to win. He's going to be triumphant in all this. And that didn't wind up being the case. If you had it to do over again, wouldn't you have put the title on Booker T here at WrestleMania?
Knowing Booker, baby. Yeah. I don't remember what they did with Triple H at the time. I remember watching the first season of Game of Thrones, and I remember when they had Ned Stark, they're about to cut off his head. And I thought, somebody's going to give him a reprieve here at the last minute. All of a sudden, they cut off his head. Like, you're kidding me. They just killed the freaking star. The guy. I love that guy. I'm not going to watch this show anymore. Then the next week, I'm watching it again because I can't quit watching. Sometimes bad guys win. That's life. If you're in the cartoon world and all these little snowflakes out there, want the cartoon, you want the Wile E. Coyote to get it at the end and never get the road runner. What if he gets the road runner, cooks him, and eats him? Sorry, that's life. Cartoons is fire bad, water good. It's very simple. That's what people want a lot of times in wrestling. Life isn't that way. I have no problem with putting a heel over, with heel getting heat and then a heel going over. It depends on what you're going to do with that heel afterwards. I don't remember what they did with Triple H afterwards, but he had obviously a great, terrific run after that. So did Booker. So I don't think there's a problem here. I don't think it has to be tit for tat. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get this, and then you're going to get it back, and everybody's going to end up even. We're all going to be happy. I don't think people have to be happy. I think it's a performance, and I think you're doing something to set something in motion for something else. And when you do that, if it's all predictable, then there's no real surprise. But when Ned Stark gets his head cut off, all of a sudden people are interested in Game of Thrones going, this is different. And I think that was different then.
It just clicked for me in such a big way why you and Bruce are such good friends. If you closed your eyes right there, it sounded like I was listening to Bruce Pritchard. It was a classic Pritchard rant. And speaking of true classic, they go above and beyond when it comes to fit and fabric. It's all about helping guys show up with confidence and purpose. All their gear fits right, it feels amazing, and it's priced so guys everywhere can step into confidence without stepping out of their budget. Now, what really sets True Classic apart? Well, it's not just the fit or the fabric. It's the intention behind everything they do. True Classic was built to make an impact, whether it's helping men show up better in their daily lives, giving back to underserved communities, or making people laugh with ads that don't take themselves too seriously. They lead with purpose with True Classic. And I've been wearing True Classic stuff for a while now. You can actually feel the difference the minute you throw one on. It's tailored the way you want it. It's relaxed where you need it. There's no bunching. There's no fabric that's stiff. There's no BS. It's just a clean, effortless fit that actually works for real life. So forget those overpriced designer brands and ditch the disposable fast fashion. True Classic is built for comfort, built to last, and built to give back. You can grab True Classic at Target, Costco, or head on over right now to trueclassic.com/STW and get hooked up today. That's trueclassic.com/STW. John, one of my favorite things about you that I used to love about your character is you get the absolute dog shit beat out of you as a heel, and then the next day claim that you kicked that guy's ass from pillar to post. It's what I loved about Hulk Hogan's promos when he was Hollywood Hogan on Nitro. But there was even a report of you doing some SmackDown tapings in Rockford, Illinois here in 2004. And there was a 6-man tag, I guess. And ultimately you take the pin. And afterwards you do a promo where you say that you haven't lost a match in a year. And you hated even being here tonight. These guys had an unfair advantage. I was tired. I'd just come off a trip to Europe. I just love that after you lose, you still want to explain to everybody that you didn't really lose, and here's why. That's such great shit, dude. This isn't even something on air. You're just doing it for the fans in the house. Are you doing that to pop yourself, Vince in the back, the boys? Like, you're doing this just for shits and giggles. It's not even for TV. You're just enjoying it. Tell me why you're doing this.
All the above. I used to love stuff like that. A lot of times I'd close the show and then I'd have to get on the microphone and do something. And I just enjoyed the art of performing, whatever it was. I would love to make excuses for whatever I did, talk about how great I was, talk about how I beat up somebody when I just got really demolished by somebody. The thing with the Undertaker at SummerSlam that one year, he goes, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want you to kill me. Throw me through my own limousine. I'm wearing a neck brace. I'm going to tell everybody for months that I beat the Undertaker right in the middle of the ring," which obviously is a lie. I had so much fun when people gave me a live microphone and said, "Okay, just be entertaining." There were so many times during a Raw show or during a show when Vince would buzz my ear and go, "John, give me a couple of minutes." He literally would say, "He want me to grab a microphone in the middle of a show. I'm doing commentary and talk to the crowd about something without any warning, anything." I loved it. I thought it was so fun. It was so fun to be the challenge to be out there with no safety net, nothing written, and see if you could do something that's entertaining. Get them to boo you, get them to cheer you, get them to laugh, get them to do something, but get them to be entertained. That was one of the most fun things I did. It was so challenging and so fun. I loved every second of it.
Man, I just love promos like that, and especially knowing it's not even for TV. It's just for the people here, but you're having fun, and that comes through loud and clear. I want to ask you about a SmackDown taping in St. Louis. We had Josh Matthews interviewing you and Jordan, and when he talks back to you, you guys beat him up, and they're going back and forth, and before you know it, Booker wants a match against you and Orlando Jordan. Teddy Long is making him pick a partner. Josh is there begging to be the partner. So you've got Booker T and Josh Matthews, who we knew from Tough Enough, but now he is an interviewer. He's a part of the broadcast team. They're going to team up against you and Orlando Jordan. Talk us through this.
Yeah, Josh was at TNA for a while. I guess he just left and I guess he's now with AEW, I think.
That's right.
Josh is a pretty talented guy and fun, but he's not very big. So he's perfect. Me and Orlando were really big guys. And Josh was the perfect guy for us to pick on and bully and be mean to and have Booker come save him. So I thought it made a lot of sense. Josh was very talented and could do a lot of different things, but it worked. Vince always wanted announcers and managers to be small, so you could bully them, so the heels could bully them and be so much bigger than them. It's tough. Like when you had an announcer like Gorilla Monsoon, he might be the toughest guy in the building. So, but with Josh, it was just perfect.
Let's talk about Survivor Series. You have your title match with Booker T. You're coming in as the champ. You guys get plenty of time, 14 minutes and 43 seconds. You retain the title. Meltzer would say the crowd was dead for the match, and then Orlando Jordan kept interfering. It got a 1.5 stars. Dave was pretty critical of the booking with the ref bumps and the run-ins and things like that. But you're out there with your buddy, and I just can't help but think about you guys as young upstarts working the Texas indie scene before they're signed with WCW, before you're signed with the WWE. If you could have said, "Hey guys, one day you guys are going to wrestle for the WWF World Title at Survivor Series on pay-per-view," I don't think either one of you would have believed that. But here it is. You're making it happen. I mean, on some level, who gives a shit what the critics say? This has to be a cool moment for you in your career to be in there with one of your buddies that you broke in with, kind of.
Yeah, one of the coolest moments of my whole career. That was one of the top moments I'll go to my grave loving. Booker and I've got this old picture of me and Booker from Corkin Hall down in Japan. We're back downstairs, and well, we look young. That was 30-something years ago. I remember going to Tokyo Zoo on our day off with me and Bobby Duncombe and Steve Simpson, James Beard, and just go around looking at all the animals, just having fun. Just having a good time. Going to Korea together, sitting in the locker room in the sportatorium together, and hoping one day we'd make some money. And then all of a sudden we're headlining this major pay-per-view. Man, that was a dream come true. It really was. It was. I'm out there not just with a guy I started with, but one of my really good friends. And that was, I'd wrote the foreword to his book, with I think The World of Booker. That meant a lot to me to be out there with Booker. My career, I don't think my career would have been the same if I didn't have a moment like that, especially with Booker, especially as much success as he had, because he's a two-time Hall of Famer, but he had so much success. I'd love for being Ron to be able to work with Harlem Heat. That would have been fun.
My God. Yes.
But to get to work with Booker was a dream.
I love that you got to have that match, and I love what you got to do the next month. Of course, along the way, you had the Bashams to your faction, if you will. Everybody was really impressed with what they were seeing from those guys down at OVW, so they're going to become a part of your cabinet. And Armageddon is the next month after the Survivor Series pay-per-view, and it's almost like the guys who maybe meant the most to you in your singles career are your opponents. It's a four-way with The Undertaker, Eddie Guerrero, and Booker T. I mean, here's the guy who helped, give you new life as a part of what became the APA with the Acolytes and The Undertaker. And then here's Eddie Guerrero, the guy who dropped the title to you to make you the world champion the first time. And here's another guy who worked with you a lot on the Texas indie scene when you were first trying to get going. And now you're here as the freaking champ against all these guys. Like, in the main event of a pay-per-view, this has got to be like pinch me moment for you personally, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I remember once they did a promo. It's out there on the internet. You can find it. And I turned them and said, "You guys aren't getting it. Do I have to tell you in Spanish to Eddie?" And I said, "Turn to Booker." I said, "Do I have to tell you in hip hop to Booker?" And I said, "Do I have to tell you in Monster to Undertaker?" As I'm walking out and leaving, I'm not wrestling you guys. I ain't doing it. And then when the match started, they all three got around. There's this cool picture where they're like surrounding me, and I'm sitting there just kind of looking around, all scared to death. That was a lot of fun. That was, man. You got three Hall of Famers, three guys who made me in my career, completely made me, and all of them are together with me in one night. That was fun.
You ultimately pinned Booker T there, but that wouldn't be the end of Booker T in main events on pay-per-view. We know that in 2006, Booker's going to reinvent himself. When he wins the King of the Ring, he's going to start calling himself King Booker. Something about that really clicks, and it cements him as a main event heel in WWE. Why do you think the switch? First of all, it took a little bit of vote of confidence from the office to allow him to be King of the Ring, but that allowed him the opportunity to really roll the dice and try something that was kind of out there. And as a reminder, this is 06, no disrespect at all, but this is ahead of broken Matt Hardy, this alter ego where we're talking differently and all that. We're still a few years away from that. Maybe he's channeling his inner Macho King and turning the volume all the way up. I don't know, but I think we all loved King Booker. Did it feel like a risk to you at the time for him to go from this silly guy, this very serious performer, to showing this comedic side? Because sometimes when you do that, that means there's a glass ceiling on how high up the card you can go, right?
Yeah, there is. But he'd already done some of it, with the supermarket fight with Steve. That was,
and Goldust stuff, yeah.
And Goldust. Him and Goldust were just, just amazing. Which by the way, Briscoe and Thunderbolt were the first, black and white tag team, and then we had Owen and Coco. And then you had me and Ron, and of course you had the Dudleys, and then you have Booker and Goldust, and so now it doesn't matter, but the time, you didn't have just a ton of those, interracial tag teams, as crazy as it sounds, blacks with blacks, whites with whites, cowboys, cowboys, natives with natives, English with English, but they were just magic. Goldust is so talented, and so is Booker. But you saw what Booker did with Goldust. You saw what Booker did with Steve. And then you knew he could do this. And I loved it because I got to talk about Camelot and the Queen of Sheba. And I got to call him, the walk down was the most fun thing in the world to me. I would just sit there and think about all these great lines, in history of great kings and all this stuff. That was a lot of fun.
I really enjoyed King Booker. I don't know why it was so fun, but it was. We know that Booker T proved time and time again that he was the man. He ultimately went to TNA, had a lot of fun down there. One of my favorite segments ever was when he did commentary on his own match. And
yes.
He's just beating the guy's ass and then telling him about it over the loudspeaker. It was hilarious. He's been back with WWE for, almost 15 years now. He's still doing his thing. You can catch him each and every Tuesday on NXT. We are big Booker T fans here. I'm glad that he is a two-time WWE Hall of Famer, once as a tag teamer and as a single star. I mean, when you think about, the very best that WCW had to offer, I mean, Booker T has the stats. I know a lot of people's heartstrings would say you got to say Sting or you got to say Ric Flair. But if you talk about the individual wrestler who won the most gold, it's Booker T, and it's not close.
Yeah, and consistency. I mean, just consistency. He consistently, from whether he's a tag team, whether he's a singles, whatever he was, Booker was consistent. And I agree with you. You got to put him up there with, it's hard to say when you're talking about the greatest. It's not like one's good and one's bad. One's great and one's greater. If you're saying number one to number two, but I don't know how you don't put Booker at least in the top three. And anybody can make an argument that he's number one.
Let's do some questions. We are live here with John, so if you've got a question, keep them coming. We're going to go till at least the top of the hour when Monday Night Raw starts. AOTV Productions is with us, and they say, "Hey, John, what are your thoughts on Brock Lesnar's daughter, Maya, being the number 1 ranked NCAA women's shot putter?" I don't know if you saw that, but Brock Lesnar's daughter, she's apparently crushing it in the shot put.
I did. Absolute stud. Won it four straight years. Yeah, absolute stud. I mean, look at her daddy. I mean, if we get invaded by aliens, I'm sending Brock out. That'll stop. We're done. They're leaving back to wherever they came from.
AOTV Productions also wants to know, "Hey, John, what are the chances R-Truth returns to WWE through TNA?" Yeah, you got to think if you're TNA, if you're GCW, if you're MLW, if you're AEW, if you're Ring of Honor, if you're New Japan, I mean, whoever you are, if you're CMLL, if you're AAA, if you're in the wrestling business, you're interested in Ron Killings, right?
The guy that can make a fortune with him is Tommy Dreamer in TNA.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
I guarantee it. Tommy is – I love Tommy as a booker. I think he's a very creative guy. But he also understands, the best thing we do is the Gaga.
Yes.
And that's what R-Truth is so good at. And he can draw money doing it, which very few people can do. Tommy knows how to do that. I saw the tweet or X or whatever post, whatever you call it, that Tommy put out about Truth. If I'm Truth, I'd call Tommy Dreamer. Or actually, Tommy's probably going to call him. Or I hope he does. I don't have any backstage information or anything, but I think that's a natural fit. I would love for him to go to TNA.
I love that. Shout out to that. I would love to see him go back. He won the NWA world title there. Let's have him go win the TNA world title.
Oh, my God. He would be so good there, and Tommy would make a fortune with him. Tommy is a terrific booker. He knows how to book creative guys like Truth. He would do a great job with him.
Guy W. Johns is with us, and he's letting everybody know that he just took a honeymoon cruise. He did an excursion in Cozumel, and it was a Lucha Libre event. So if you're doing a cruise in Cozumel, they have a fun Lucha show that you can attend. Man, I love you, Guy, for being able to sell your wife. Honeymoon. There you go. Okay. Try that on your 10-year anniversary, my man. See how it goes. Alex wants to know, "John, what's been better to you financially, professional wrestling or the stock market?"
Long-term stock market. And both have been, I've been very blessed to be have success in both. I've been, my investments are. I'm not a risky investor. I've just invested, in good companies that I like over the years. I don't trade stocks. I just invest and pretty much leave my stuff there. And fortunately, I've been pretty fortunate with my investments.
Well, you do have some fun with some other investments. Tell everybody about 5 best bets.
Yeah, I've got Five Best Bets. It's Five Best Bets is on my X account, and it's under at Five Best Bets. Putting out Five Best Bets. Been a couple days since I put it out, but Five Best Bets every day with baseball. We've been winning like crazy, and there's nothing more fun than gambling to me, and I enjoy it. I bet 15, 20 bets a day, literally. I have 15, 20 bets a day today. Not today because there's only about 6 games today, so I'll probably have 10 bets because I bet first inning bets, I bet over-unders, and I bet obviously sides. And a lot of times I'll bet based upon how a batter hits a pitcher or how a certain batter hits a left-handed or right-handed pitcher or how a pitcher strikeout total. So I'll have probably 10, 12 bets today. But Five Best Bets is what it is. It's also got on our YouTube channel, Stories of Briscoe and Bradshaw, our podcast is. We've also got, it's posted on there every single day.
Hey, Stories of Briscoe and Bradshaw. Who was your most recent interview there?
We had Jack Hughes from he did some big interview. He did big UFO stuff. He just did an album with Jack Hughes. Oh my God. Jerry's going to kill me.
Who was the wrestler right before that?
We just did a big deal on Jim Barnett. We had Ted Arcidi recently. Ted Arcidi was fantastic. Ted Arcidi did 667 bench in 1984. It has not been beaten raw, which means without the paraphernalia of the lifting shirt and stuff. I mean, that makes him the strongest, best bencher of all time. He's got 2 repaired shoulders, replaced shoulders right now. And he was probably 65, I'm guessing. And he goes, I'm benching like 300 now. I said, with replaced shoulders at 65, you're not supposed to be benching at all. But that's him.
I thought you recently caught up with an ECW wrestler. Has that not been posted yet?
Which ECW wrestler? We've done so many recently.
Well, shit, I was just trying to tease a Blue Meanie conversation.
Oh, yes. We had Meanie on with Jack Hughes because of the UFO content.
Oh,
and we also had Meanie on. We've had Meanie on by himself with us, but anytime we have a UFO, we always have Meanie on because, as I've told you, Meanie's a UFO expert.
I don't know why it tickles me, but it just does. I got a text message out of the blue one day that said, well, we had Blue Meanie on. He's a UFO expert. And there was no LOL. There was no ha-ha. And I've just never seen those words touched before. Like, what? He's an expert on something that doesn't fucking exist? He's an expert on this make-believe thing? Then I was like, well, there is Dave Meltzer, so I guess you can be an expert in anything. Alex says, how long have you did?
And Jack Hughes was Wang Chung. I'm sorry, I had it all. I've done so many interviews late, but he was Wang Chung, and we had him on, and Meanie was there, and I said, and he's a huge UFO guy. And so I said, we have Brian Haffern here, also known as the Blue Meanie, and Jack was wonderful. He lives down in Austin, Texas now. Terrific, talent, but also very articulate guy. And he said, now why is he here? I said, because of the UFO conversation we're about to have. And they had the best UFO conversation. I'm just sitting there listening to them go back and forth. It was awesome.
Briscoe Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw. Anywhere you enjoy podcasts.
Briscoe on that peyote sees the UFOs all the dang time. I don't know.
I'm sure he does. Alex says, how long have you dipped tobacco? I see that can and that spitter sitting there. What's your go-to brand? Is that Grizzly?
Not mine. I'm in my dad's office. My dad passed away several years ago, but that an older brother was here using the office. That was his. So not mine. I never got used to dipping tobacco. Thank goodness I didn't, because I'd probably be doing it. I'm too addicted to things, so thank goodness I didn't.
Instagram a wrestling historian wants to know, APA or the Harlem Heat, who wins?
Oh, APA, no doubt about it.
I love that. Alex says, how did you guys handle working when there was a language barrier problem? Did you have to pre-plan every move with a translator, or do you just trust each other out there? That's actually a pretty logical question if you think about the language barrier and say Japan. If you're in there with an opponent and he doesn't speak English and you don't speak Japanese, how do you get that done, John?
It is so hard to explain. It's a feel thing, and when you're talking about suplexing a guy or shooting him off on the ropes and hitting him with a drop kick or something, which I didn't do, but a guy hit me maybe. It's so hard to explain that there's so much feel that goes on because Japanese crowds were quiet. You couldn't call spots in the ring very well. It was just a lot of feel, about who was on top at what point, who was getting beat up at one point. We went to Korea. Booker was with us. That's when a guy named Lee Wan Pyo, he was the head of the Korean wrestling. He's the one that stole Booker's spinneroonie. He had Booker come to the gym, show him the spinneroonie, and he started using it in the main event. he used Booker's best move. But I remember we were sitting there, and we didn't know if these guys, literally, we didn't know if it was a shoot or not. I mean, I'm not. It was crazy. We're looking at these guys. I figured my match was, because I was working, I think me and Booker may be working with the last match with Lee Wan Pyo. I knew mine was, or at least I thought it was. But Steve Simpson was out there with some cauliflower-eared guy, and this guy was just kind of eyeballing him. And Steve had a plan. I mean, he had a plan in case it turned into a shoot, but it wasn't. Neither one could understand each other. Steve didn't speak any Korean. Korean didn't speak any English. They just went out there and had a match. And I had it with other Koreans and didn't speak a word of the language. It just kind of feel. It's really strange that you can get through it and, hopefully have a decent match even, but without understanding a word of the other guy's language.
Jagger Singh is with us here live, and he wants to know, does JBL hate Josh Matthews? JBL, you're the GOAT. I hadn't heard that. Do you hate Josh Matthews too? Is that right?
I guess I hate him too. I hate everybody if you read the internet. No, I don't. Good Lord, no. I did commentary with Josh.
Alex
I'm at TNA. I was glad that he got on with AEW. I have no idea why he wasn't with TNA anymore, but they changed some things, I guess. I have no idea. I wasn't in on any of that, but I just saw he was gone, and now he's with AEW, I guess. So good for Josh.
I mean, but just so I'm clear, like if he got in the way, you'd still close on the shit out of him, right?
I'd close on that guy that sent in that question too. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Of course I would.
Make sure. Yeah.
I'd close on him. I'd hit him with a trash can. Yes. Yes.
There's a rapper that you won't be familiar with, but I started to say maybe Dave Silva was, but he doesn't even know who that Mexican OT is, so probably not. But there was a rapper named
Texas too.
Yes.
And yes. Dave Silva has no idea who he is.
Never heard of him. But there's a rapper named Riff Raff, and he famously said in a lyric once that I thought, man, that would actually fit for you in the Clothesline from Hell. Any bitch can get it. Alex says,
that is great. I need to put that on
I
the
can just see you warming up. Any bitch can get it.
Any bitch can get it.
Alex says, hypothetically, what would have happened if Buff and Booker had a 5-star classic? Would it have completely changed the course of the WWE? Now that, Alex, is a great question. What if it had gone the other way and people were blown away and they were like, holy shit, that's the best Raw main event in a long time? I don't know how that would have happened, but let's pretend it did.
Yeah.
That could have changed a lot of things, could it not?
Yeah, but what are you going to do then? I mean, Alex, that's a great question. But what if it was a 5-star classic, as they say? What are you going to do then? We only got like 8 guys from WCW. It wasn't an invasion. We got like 8 or 10 guys. That's all we got. We didn't have enough for a roster. We didn't have enough for their own brand. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking putting them out there because it wasn't really WCW. I mean, it was WCW, but there wasn't a lot of backup for it. You only got like 10 guys or something. So if you'd have had a great match, you still would have had to pull the plug on it, I think.
Well, we're all excited here because we had a lot of fun talking about Booker T and Alex, who brought a lot of great questions today. He clearly watches Booker T's independent wrestling promotion. I want to give them a plug. Reality of Wrestling is a fantastic promotion in the Houston area. Highly recommend you check it out. You'll see a lot of your favorite stars that you've seen on TV. Had some of their very first matches there. And he does a great podcast. We should also plug that with our buddy Brad. We just think the absolute world of Booker T. But if you keep up with his wrestling promotion, ROW, you'll probably dig what Alex is suggesting. I'd like to see John show up at ROW and hit Zilla Fatu with that big old clothesline from hell. Just saying. John?
I'm not sure I want to hit anybody named Fatu. Brother, if you got a Polynesian name, I'm probably not going to hit you.
I love you for that. I really thought I was giving you a softball to go, any bitch can get it, and you go, Fatu. I'll pass on that one. Maybe we'll try that next week. This was a lot of fun. I really had a lot of fun chatting here and talking about Booker T today. We've got a big Monday Night Raw tonight, and then we've got a big Money in the Bank this weekend. Is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to in wrestling or in your travels this week, John?
No, nothing this week. I'm going. Let's see. This week I'm going to. Oh, I'm down in Temple, Texas. Got beers with JBL on a Friday night, and then I got a show to do with 360 Productions, which is these guys in Texas. I'm telling you, I've never seen independents hotter than what they are right now. And these guys are selling out their shows everywhere, whether it's 800 people, 2,000 people, whatever it is, they're selling out everywhere they go. It's just unbelievable business. And nobody hardly knows about them. It's just kind of underneath the radar. There's so many great promotions out there. And there's incredible talent. And every show that I go down for 360 Productions, a guy named Aaron Presley, really good dude, does a bull riding also promotions. I'll sit there and somebody will come up to me and go, I'm one of Booker T's guys. And I just love it. I just love hearing that. To get to meet guys that Booker has trained.
Go check it out anywhere you enjoy wrestling. I know they're on Triller TV, and I know they've got a YouTube. They're on Twitter. Reality of Wrestling right there in the Houston area. Of course, be sure to check out Booker T on his Hall of Fame podcast. Catch him every Tuesday night doing commentary on NXT. And, John, where are you off to next?
Well, I got the Temple, Texas. Then I got a show up in Massachusetts. I may be going down to AAA. A few things have changed in AAA, and so I'm still got a great relationship with them. Not sure where I'm going to be going forward with them as far as when and stuff like that. So, not sure. A lot of changes happening right now with WWE reaching out and expanding like they're doing. And I say expanding. Well, I guess expanding is the right word.
I, for one, can't wait for them to put together When Worlds Collide this weekend. It's going to be on YouTube. It's this Saturday. It's WWE and it's AAA. We'll talk about it next week right here on Something to Wrestle with John Layfield.